Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. Looking back, the signs were there all morning. The empty seats in homeroom, the ambulance wailing past during second period, that weird lockdown announcement that cut off mid-sentence. But when you're 16 and arguing with your dad about college applications is the biggest drama in your life, you don't notice the world crumbling around you. I shouldn't have fought with him. That's what keeps eating at me now. Dad was just trying to help, pushing me to apply early to MIT like he did. "Holden, you have the grades," he insisted over breakfast, steam rising from his coffee cup. "You can't waste your potential at some state school." I snapped back that maybe I didn't want to follow his perfect path, that maybe I was sick of living in his shadow. The hurt in his eyes still haunts me. If I'd known what was coming, I would have hugged him goodbye instead of slamming the door. Eastbrook High felt normal enough that morning. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their usual sickly glow across crowded hallways that smelled of floor cleaner and teenage anxiety. Mr. White droned on about derivatives in AP Calc while I doodled circuits in my notebook, trying not to think about college essays. Kayla Mitchell passed me a note about tonight's basketball game, which I crumpled without reading. Just another Tuesday in suburban Connecticut, until the screaming started. It came from the direction of the cafeteria during fourth period. Not the usual excited shrieks of kids goofing off, but something primal and terrified that made the hair on my neck stand up. Our chemistry teacher, Mrs. Denning, paused her lecture on molecular bonds, frowning at the door. Then the fire alarm blared, its harsh ring drilling into our skulls. "Everyone stay calm," Mrs. Denning called out as chairs scraped back from lab tables. "Single file line." But before we could even stand up, Principal Wallace's voice crackled over the PA system, strained and breathless. "This is a code red lockdown. This is not a drill. All students and faculty must immediately—" The announcement cut off with a burst of static. Through the classroom's narrow window, I caught glimpses of people running past. Not the orderly evacuation we'd practiced, but pure panic. A freshman girl sprinted by with blood streaming down her face. Two teachers half-carried, half-dragged a limping student whose shirt was soaked red. Mrs. Denning rushed to lock the door, her hands shaking so badly she dropped the keys twice. "Get away from the windows," she ordered, voice tight with forced calm. Everyone moved to the back of the room. Now. Most of my classmates huddled together by the supply cabinets, whispering frantically and checking their phones. No signal. I stayed at my desk, paralyzed as more screams echoed through the halls. Something slammed against our door hard enough to rattle the hinges. Through the window's safety wire mesh, I saw a hand smear blood across the glass. "Oh God," someone whimpered. "What's happening?" The banging grew more intense. Mrs. Denning backed away from the door, her face pale. "Children, I need you to listen carefully. When I say go, we're going to—" The glass shattered inward as Mr. Peterson, the gym teacher, crashed through. Only it wasn't really him anymore. His skin had a grayish tint and his eyes were glazed white. Unseeing. Blood and something darker dripped from his mouth as he lurched toward Mrs. Denning with terrifying speed. She didn't even have time to scream before he was on her, teeth tearing into her throat. Crimson sprayed across the periodic table poster behind her desk. The classroom erupted in chaos, screaming, crying, shoving as everyone rushed for the back door. I sat frozen, watching in horror as Mrs. Denning thrashed and gurgled, her hands weakly pushing against Mr. Peterson's face. A hand grabbed my arm, yanking me from my stupor. Denny Wong, my lab partner since freshman year, pulled me toward the exit. "Move," he hissed. "Now!" I stumbled after him as more of them burst through the broken window. Students and teachers I'd known for years, now transformed into something impossible. Their movements were rigid yet purposeful, driven by raw hunger. Blood stained their clothes and faces as they pursued us with single-minded determination. We spilled into the hallway along with the rest of our class, into a nightmare of screams and running feet, and that horrible sound. Wet tearing followed by agonized shrieks cut horribly short. Emergency lights flashed, painting everything in stuttering red. The air stank of copper and fear. "The gym," Marcus panted as we sprinted past overturned trash cans and abandoned backpacks. "Side doors always propped open for ventilation. We can get out that way." I nodded, too breathless to speak. We rounded the corner toward the gymnasium, only to skid to a stop. The entire basketball team lay scattered across the floor in pieces, their white jerseys now crimson. Standing among them was Coach Harris. His face and hands darkened with gore as he feasted on what remained of the point guard. Marcus retched beside me. The sound drew Coach's attention, his head snapping up with predatory focus. Those milky eyes locked onto us as he rose, movement stiff but somehow lightning fast. We turned to run, but more of them were already approaching from behind, cutting off our escape. "In here!" I grabbed Marcus's sleeve and yanked him toward the equipment room. We slammed the door just as Coach slammed into it, the impact nearly knocking us down. I scrambled to wedge a baseball bat through the handle, while Marcus shoved storage shelves against the wall for reinforcement. The metal door shuddered as they pounded against it, the sound echoing off cinder block walls. In the dim light filtering through dusty windows, Marcus and I stared at each other, panting. "What do we do now?" he whispered. I pulled out my phone again, desperate to reach my dad, to apologize, to warn him. Still no signal. Through the high windows, I could see more figures shambling across the parking lot, some heading toward the neighborhoods beyond, toward home. "We have to get out of here," I said. "We have to warn people." The pounding grew louder. A hinge creaked ominously. Time was running out. "There's a maintenance tunnel," Marcus said suddenly. "Connects to the boiler room. My cousin's on janitorial staff. Showed me once when I helped him move equipment." I nodded, trying to think through the panic clouding my mind. "Where?" "Under those mats." He pointed to a stack of wrestling mats in the corner. "But Holden," he swallowed hard, "we don't know what's down there." The door frame splintered. Through the widening gap, I saw Coach's bloodied face, teeth snapping. More hands reached through, clawing at the air. "We don't have a choice." Together we heaved the mats aside, revealing a metal trapdoor set into the floor. The rusted hinges screamed in protest as we yanked it open. Darkness gaped below, along with the musty smell of damp concrete. The battery icon on my phone showed 47%, not much, but it would have to do for light. The door behind us gave way with a crash. I shoved Marcus toward the hole. "Go!" He dropped into the darkness as Coach burst through our barricade. I dove in after, pulling the trapdoor shut above me just as grasping hands reached for my legs. The impact rattled my teeth as I hit the concrete floor 8 feet below. Switching on my phone's flashlight, I helped Marcus to his feet. The narrow tunnel stretched into blackness in both directions. Above us, fists pounded against metal, the sound hollow and distant. "Which way?" I whispered. Marcus pointed left, his hand trembling. "Boiler room should be that way, maybe 50 yards. I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. "Okay, let's go." As we crept forward, the screams from above grew fainter, replaced by the drip of water and our own quiet footsteps. My light caught pipes running along the ceiling, cobwebs, rat droppings. The air felt thick with decades of dust. I couldn't stop thinking about my dad, alone at his office downtown. Did he know what was happening? Was he safe? I had to reach him. I had to tell him I was sorry. But first, we had to survive this tunnel, one step at a time. The beam of light swung wildly as I stumbled on something. Looking down, I saw a maintenance worker's uniform, dark stains spreading across the fabric. The body wearing it lay motionless, face down in a pool of congealing blood. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Holden." The body twitched. The maintenance worker rose, bones cracking as it twisted upward at impossible angles. Denny yanked me backward as the figure contorted, limbs snapping into place with sickening pops. My phone light caught its ravaged throat, torn flesh glistening with blackened blood. Its head swiveled toward us, jaw working soundlessly. Those clouded eyes tracking our movement with predatory intensity. "Go!" Denny shoved me forward into the narrow maintenance passage. Pipes hissed overhead, releasing bursts of steam that cast writhing shadows on concrete walls slick with condensation. The passage was barely wider than my shoulders, a service crawl space rather than a proper tunnel. Our footsteps echoed as we scrambled ahead, the infected workers scraping against the walls behind us as it pursued. A rusted metal door appeared ahead, the baseball equipment storage room connecting to the school's lower level. I fumbled for the key I'd found weeks ago during practice, nearly dropping it as another crash echoed through the passage. More figures emerged from the darkness, contorting as they advanced. The lock clicked, and we tumbled through, slamming the door as bodies thudded against it. The small room smelled of leather and pine tar, equipment bags and crates stacked haphazardly against cinderblock walls. Emergency lights pulsed crimson, transforming familiar shapes into looming monsters. My phone finally caught signal, flooding with notifications. Texts from Dad lit up the screen. "Holden, stay at school. City's not safe. National Guard mobilizing. I'll come get you. Don't leave." Then, minutes later, National Guard failed to secure perimeter. Infected breached downtown. "I'm coming for you. Hide. Wait for me." I tried responding, but the message failed to send. News alerts painted a nightmare scenario spreading across the Northeast. Hospitals overwhelmed, police barricades failing, infection spreading through bites and open wounds. Victims turned within minutes. "We need weapons," Denny said, already digging through equipment bags. He tossed me a wooden bat, solid maple, the sweet spot worn smooth from countless practice swings. He grabbed an aluminum bat for himself, testing its weight. The door shuddered as something slammed against it repeatedly. Through gaps in the frame, gray fingers probed inside, skin peeling back from blackened nails. The hinges groaned. "That door's not going to last," I said, gripping the bat tighter. "We need to move." Denny nodded toward the equipment room's inner door. "If we can reach the gym, maybe." Gunshots cut him off, sharp cracks from somewhere above followed by screaming. Then silence, broken only by a wet, tearing sound that made my stomach lurch. We eased the inner door open, peering into the corridor beyond. The scene froze us in place. Bodies sprawled across blood-slicked tiles. Students. Teachers, the resource officer still clutching his empty gun. Among them, the infected wandered in erratic patterns. Some dragged themselves forward on broken limbs, others swayed like branches in wind. One crawled along the ceiling pipes, head twisted completely backward to track movement below. "The stairwell," Denny whispered, pointing to a door halfway down the hall. "If we can get upstairs." A scream shattered the relative quiet. Amy Chen burst from a classroom, clutching her bleeding arm. The infected snapped toward the sound, converging on her position. Some scrambled on all fours like spiders. Others staggered in drunken zigzags, but all moved with the same savage purpose. "We have to help," I started, but the words died as I watched Amy change. Gray spread across her skin like watercolor bleeding through paper. Her movements grew spastic, joints popping as she stumbled. Before reaching the end of the hall, she collapsed. When she rose seconds later, only hunger remained in those milky eyes. "That's our chance," Denny said as the infected swarmed Amy's position. "Ready?" I nodded, barely trusting my voice. We slipped into the corridor, bats raised. The floor was slick with cooling blood that squelched beneath our shoes. I tried not to look at the faces of the fallen as we crept toward the stairwell. A sudden movement caught my eye, a figure standing motionless in a supply closet. Through the half-open door, I recognized Trevor Nash, the auto shop TA. My heart leaped for a moment until I saw his face in the emergency lights. His skin had that telltale gray pallor, eyes vacant and clouded like the others. The way he swayed reminded me of footage I'd seen of zombies in old horror movies, but this was horrifyingly real. "Holden, don't!" Denny grabbed for my arm, but I was already too close. Trevor's head snapped toward the movement and he lurched forward, mouth gaping. He launched himself at me with raw animal instinct, fingers curved into claws. But this time, I was ready. The bat connected with his temple, the impact traveling up my arms as Trevor crumpled. I fought back bile as I stepped over him, his body already starting to twitch and contort. The sound drew the others. They abandoned Amy's position, heads snapping toward us with synchronized hunger. Some bounded forward on shattered limbs, others slithered along walls. All converged with unstoppable determination. "Run!" Denny shouted. We sprinted for the stairwell as the infected closed in, their rasping chorus growing louder with each step. I yanked the door open and we dove through, taking the stairs two at a time. Below, bodies slammed against metal as the infected poured into the stairwell. We emerged onto the second floor, but any hope of escape died instantly. The hallway ahead was packed with infected, students and teachers transformed into savage hunters. Behind us, more clawed their way up the stairs. The only way left was up. "Third floor," Denny panted as we climbed. "We can try to—" A hand seized my ankle, yanking hard. I nearly fell, catching the railing at the last second. Below, Trevor's mangled face grinned up at me, teeth snapping. The bat slipped from my fingers, clattering into darkness. Adrenaline surged through me as I kicked frantically at Trevor's face, trying to break his grip. His teeth snapped inches from my ankle, spittle flying. Without my bat, panic clawed at my chest. Below, more infected poured into the stairwell, a mass of grasping hands and vacant eyes. The aluminum crack of Denny's bat connecting with Trevor's skull echoed through the stairwell. The grip on my ankle went slack. I scrambled up the remaining steps as Trevor's body tumbled down, knocking others off balance in a grotesque domino effect. We burst through the third-floor door, slamming it behind us. Denny wedged his bat through the handle while I caught my breath, hands shaking on my knees. The relative quiet up here felt wrong after the chaos below. "You okay?" Denny asked, checking my ankle. I nodded, though my stomach churned at how close I'd come to ending up like Amy. "Thanks, I owe you." "Yeah." "Well." He tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "What kind of lab partner would I be if I let you become zombie chow?" The word hung between us. Zombie. We'd both been thinking it, comparing what we'd seen to every horror movie we'd watched. But saying it out loud made this nightmare feel too real. A crash from below snapped us back to reality. The stairwell door shuddered as infected threw themselves against it. The bat in the handle rattled but held. For now. The third floor housed the library and computer labs. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, creating pools of deceptive normalcy on the carpet. Papers littered the hallway, along with abandoned backpacks and a single shoe. But no bodies, no blood, just emptiness and silence. "Library might be safe," I whispered. "Heavy doors, lots of places to hide until help comes." Denny shook his head. "We'd be trapped. Need to find a way out." He pointed to a window at the end of the hall. "Fire escape, maybe?" Before I could respond, my phone vibrated. Another text from Dad. "Downtown overrun, taking back roads. Almost there. Find high ground. Signal when safe." My hands trembled as I typed back. "Third floor, library side. Hurry." This time the message sent. 1 bar of signal, better than nothing. A rhythmic pounding drew our attention. Through the library's glass doors, we saw movement in the shadows between towering shelves. Someone was alive in there, desperately signaling for help. "We can't just leave them," I said, already moving toward the doors. "Holden, wait." Denny grabbed my arm. "Remember Trevor? Remember Amy? We can't trust— Look." I pointed to a figure pressed against the glass. Ms. Rivera, the librarian, very much alive and human. Behind her, I could see others, a handful of students huddled under study tables, watching us with desperate hope. The pounding at the stairwell grew louder. The bat in the handle began to bend. "Fine," Denny muttered, "but we do this smart." We approached carefully, watching Ms. Rivera's skin for any signs of gray. Her eyes were clear and alert as she quickly unlocked the door, ushering us inside. The heavy doors clicked shut behind us just as the stairwell barrier finally gave way with a metallic snap. 6 students had taken refuge in the library, all from study hall when everything went wrong. They sat in a tight circle, faces pale and drawn. Ryan from my history class had a nasty cut on his forehead, but otherwise everyone seemed unharmed. "Thank God," Ms. Rivera breathed, hugging herself. We've been trapped here for hours. Phones stopped working. We could hear things in the halls." She glanced at the doors. "What's happening out there?" I showed her the news alerts on my phone, watching hope drain from her face as she read. Outside, shuffling footsteps approached. Shadows passed by the glass, accompanied by that awful rasping sound we'd grown to dread. "We barricaded the back emergency exit," one of the students whispered. "But they're everywhere. We checked every window. No way down without breaking something." "Which would attract more of them," Denny added grimly. I pulled up the school's floor plan on my phone, a habit from freshman year when I kept getting lost between classes. "There's roof access through the AV room," I said, pointing. "It connects to the science wing if we can reach it." A sharp crack interrupted me. We turned to see thin lines spreading across the library's glass doors where an infected had slammed into them. More shapes emerged from the hallway gloom, drawn by our movement and voices. They pressed against the glass, smearing it with blood and worse things. The cracks grew. "Those doors won't hold," Ms. Rivera said, her calm teacher voice cracking slightly. "We need to move. Now." We grabbed what we could use as weapons. Heavy textbooks, scissors from the reference desk, a metal pointer Ms. Rivera used during presentations. I found a box cutter in a drawer and handed it to Denny since he'd lost his bat saving me. The library's back exit led to a narrow service corridor connecting to the AV room. We moved as quietly as possible, jumping at every creak and settling of the old building. Behind us, the library doors finally gave way with a crash of breaking glass. Hungry moans echoed through the stacks. The AV room door was locked. While Ms. Rivera fumbled with her keys, I checked my phone again. Still one bar, but no new messages from Dad. The silence from him made my chest tighten. What was taking so long? He should have been here by now. I started typing. "Third floor, library side, where are you?" The message failed to send. A scream cut through the air. One of the students, a freshman girl whose name I didn't know, stood frozen as a figure emerged from a darkened classroom. The infected janitor's keys still hung from his belt, jingling as he lurched toward her with terrible speed. Everything happened at once. Ms. Rivera lunged forward, pushing the girl aside. The janitor's momentum carried him into the librarian instead. They went down hard, blood sprayed across the wall. The girl screamed again. More shapes appeared at both ends of the corridor, drawn by the noise. We were trapped. Here, Denny had found another bat in the AV room, probably confiscated from some student. He tossed it to me as the infected closed in, forcing us into a tight circle. Back to back, we raised our makeshift weapons. The first wave hit us like a flood. The corridor became a nightmare of flailing limbs and desperate swings. My bat connected with skull after skull, each impact sending shockwaves through my arms. Beside me, Denny slashed with the box cutter, creating space. The infected dropped, but more took their place, crawling over their fallen companions with mindless determination. Ryan went down first, overwhelmed as he tried to help the freshman girl. Their screams mixed with the wet sounds of tearing flesh. Ms. Rivera was already gone, her sacrifice buying us precious seconds. The remaining students broke formation in panic, scattering down the corridor. Their desperate flight lasted moments before the infected swarmed them. "The door!" Denny shouted over the chaos. He'd managed to grab Ms. Rivera's keys from where they'd fallen. Together, we backed toward the AV room, swinging and stabbing at anything that came close. The infected pressed forward, stumbling over bodies, filling the corridor with their rasping chorus. We practically fell through the doorway. I slammed it shut while Denny turned the key, then helped me drag a heavy equipment rack in front of it. The metal door shuddered as bodies slammed against it repeatedly. "That won't hold them long," Denny panted, wiping blood from his face. It wasn't his. "Where's the roof access?" The AV room was a maze of old TV carts and tangled cables. Windowless, one way in, one way out. Unless... I pointed to a panel in the ceiling. There, a maintenance ladder was bolted to the wall, leading to the access panel. But reaching it meant crossing the room, exposed. The door continued to buckle under the assault, the equipment rack sliding inch by inch. My phone vibrated. A text, finally. "Multiple blockades. Found military escort. Hold position. Coming. My hands shook as I showed Denny the message. My dad's coming. We just need to... The door hinges shrieked, metal tearing free. The equipment rack toppled with a thunderous crash. Infected poured through the gap, a wave of gray flesh and snapping teeth. We scrambled up the ladder as hands grabbed for our ankles. The access panel was stuck, rusted shut from lack of use. Below, the infected began climbing, their movements awkward but relentless. Come on, come on. I slammed my shoulder against the panel. Pain shot through my arm, but desperation gave me strength. The panel finally gave way with a screech of protesting metal. We pulled ourselves onto the roof, just as grasping fingers reached the top of the ladder. The morning sun was blinding after the darkness below. As my eyes adjusted, I took in our surroundings. The roof stretched out in a maze of ventilation units and ancient satellite dishes. The science wing rose another story to our right, casting long shadows. To our left, a fire escape clung to the building's edge, our potential salvation. But we weren't alone. More infected wandered the roof, maintenance workers, students who'd tried to escape this way earlier. They turned at our emergence, moving toward us with that terrible single-minded focus. The access panel behind us filled with reaching arms as others continued to climb. There, Denny pointed to a narrow maintenance walkway connecting to the science wing. We can make it if... A deafening explosion cut him off. Something had detonated in the parking lot below. The infected on the roof turned toward the sound, giving us our opening. We sprinted for the walkway as more explosions rang out, followed by the sharp rapport of military rifles. Through gaps in the rooftop equipment, I caught glimpses of the scene below. A Humvee had crashed through the parking lot barricade, leading a small convoy. Marines in tactical gear provided covering fire while my father, my stupid, brilliant father, directed them using his building security credentials. The explosions were flashbangs, drawing infected away from their position. Your dad actually did it, Denny said, grinning. He brought the cavalry. Hope surged through me. We could make it. We just had to reach the fire escape and... The maintenance walkway groaned beneath us. Years of exposure had weakened the metal. Before we could react, the entire structure gave way with a shriek of tearing steel. We fell. The world spun as we plummeted. A second-floor overhang broke our fall, the impact driving the air from my lungs. We rolled, crashing through a weather-damaged section of the roof into a storage room below. Pain shot through my shoulder as I landed hard on concrete. Denny lay motionless beside me. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, but he was breathing. Above, silhouetted figures peered down through the hole we'd created. Their vacant eyes caught the light as they began dropping into the room. Limbs twisting at impossible angles as they fell. "Denny, wake up!" I shook him frantically. He groaned, eyes fluttering. More infected crashed down around us, bones snapping on impact. Unlike us, they simply rose and advanced, heedless of their injuries. The storage room door burst open. I raised my fists, ready to go down fighting. But instead of infected, 2 Marines in tactical gear rushed in. They dropped the closest zombies with precise headshots, the suppressed rifles barely louder than coughs. "Holden?" one of them called. "Your father sent us. Can you walk?" I nodded, helping Denny to his feet. He swayed but managed to stand, clutching his head. The Marines took up defensive positions as we moved into the hallway. More soldiers were holding a perimeter, efficiently eliminating infected that got too close. "Extraction point's the east entrance," the Marine said. "Stay between us, we're getting you out." We advanced through the corridor in tight formation. The soldiers worked with practiced precision, conserving ammunition and maintaining constant communication. But even their training couldn't fully prepare them for the horror of shooting what had once been children. A scream echoed from somewhere ahead. Another survivor. One of the Marines gestured to his team. "Banks, Peters, check it out. We'll get these 2 clear." The remaining soldiers guided us toward the stairs. Halfway down, we heard gunfire from above, then silence. Banks and Peters didn't return. The ground floor was a war zone. Bodies littered the halls. Infected students, faculty. The Marines' flashbangs had drawn many outside, but plenty remained. They came at us in waves, forcing the soldiers to fall back repeatedly. "Running low on ammo," one Marine warned as he dropped another infected. "Need to move faster." We were almost to the exit when Denny stumbled, his concussion catching up to him. An infected lunch lady seized his arm. Teeth bared, I swung my bat with everything I had, caving in her skull. But the moment's delay proved costly. The Marine's perimeter broke. Infected poured in from side halls, overwhelming 2 soldiers before they could reload. Their screams were mercifully brief. The remaining Marines closed ranks around us, but they were down to their last magazines. That's when I saw him. Dad charged in through the east entrance armed with a shotgun. 2 soldiers flanked him, laying down covering fire as he reached us. "Move!" he shouted, grabbing my arm. Together we half-carried Denny toward the exit. The remaining Marines followed, step by step, until we burst into sunlight. The Humvee waited just outside, engine running. As we piled in, I looked back at the school. Infected streamed from every exit, drawn by the noise and movement. The 2 Marines who'd covered our escape never made it out. My father gunned the engine, crashing through a cluster of zombies as we fled the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, I watched my school disappear behind us, along with everyone we'd failed to save. Ms. Rivera, Ryan, all those others whose names I never even knew. Denny's head rested against my shoulder as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Dad reached back to squeeze my hand, his eyes meeting mine in the mirror. No words were needed. We'd survived, but the cost was staggering. The city burned around us as we drove toward the military evacuation zone. Smoke rose in thick columns against the morning sky. We passed abandoned cars, their doors hanging open, personal belongings scattered across the street. Occasional gunfire echoed between buildings. Somewhere, church bells began to toll. "I'm sorry about this morning," I said quietly, looking at my dad. "About college. About everything." He gripped the wheel tighter, navigating around a cluster of wrecked vehicles. "None of that matters now." His voice was hoarse from shouting commands during the rescue. "What matters is we're together." Denny stirred beside me, mumbling something about the science test we were supposed to have today. It seemed like a lifetime ago. I checked his bandaged head. The bleeding had stopped, but he needed real medical attention. "The evac zone is at the stadium," Dad explained, eyes constantly scanning the road ahead. "National Guard has it fortified. They're getting people out by helicopter." He paused. "It's not over, but we're going to make it." I nodded, watching flames reflect off broken windows. The world had changed forever in just a few hours, but we'd survived. Not everyone, not even most, but enough to keep fighting. The remaining Marines in our Humvee sat in grim silence, no doubt thinking of their fallen comrades. As we approached the stadium, I could hear the steady thrum of helicopter rotors. The morning sun broke through the smoke, casting long shadows across a city that would never be the same. For now, though, we were alive, and maybe that was enough.